Here are some facts about me. I could not eat for 2 days solving math problems. I showed disrespect and the soldier killed me for it. My generation did not understand me. My best works just disappeared. All facts are truth. Hello, I am Archimedes, an ancient Greek mathematician, physicist, engineer, and inventor, known for my work in geometry, mechanics, and fluid dynamics. I am ashamed of some things, and some things almost destroyed me. However, it is an integral part of my life. It proves that famous people have the same problems and life challenges as everyone else. Now all about it in more detail. I could not eat for 2 days solving math problems. Archimedes was a figure whose genius transcended the ordinary concerns of everyday life. His obsession with intellectual pursuits often meant that practical matters, such as his health or social obligations, were of little consequence to him. This unwavering commitment to his work became a defining feature of his character, and many accounts from his contemporaries highlight his tendency to lose himself in his intellectual endeavors. Born in 287 BCE in the Greek city of Syracuse, Archimedes grew up in an environment that nurtured his curiosity and intellect. He came from a family of means, with his father, Phidias, being an astronomer. This likely provided Archimedes with the resources and freedom to explore his interests in mathematics, physics, and engineering without the pressures of day-to-day survival. It was in this context that his obsession with intellectual pursuits began to take shape. Archimedes is most famous for his contributions to geometry and the development of mathematical principles that would later form the foundation of much of modern science and engineering. His work in calculating the area of a circle, the volume of a sphere, and the laws governing levers and buoyancy were groundbreaking. However, it was his single-minded focus on these abstract concepts that often led him to neglect the practical aspects of life. One of the most famous anecdotes that illustrate Archimedes' detachment from the world around him involves his obsession with the problem of buoyancy. According to the story, Archimedes was tasked with determining whether a gold crown made for King Hiero II of Syracuse was pure gold or mixed with another metal. Archimedes' breakthrough came when he stepped into a bath and observed the displacement of water, leading to the formulation of what we now call Archimedes' principle. It is said that he became so excited by this discovery that he ran naked through the streets of Syracuse, shouting, "Eureka!" Greek for, "I have found it." This story, while often repeated as an example of Archimedes' excitement and brilliance, also serves to highlight his disregard for social norms. The idea of running through the streets in a state of undress was not only unusual but also likely considered inappropriate in ancient Greek society. Yet, for Archimedes, the Eureka moment was so overwhelming that the boundaries of propriety seemed insignificant in comparison to the intellectual breakthrough he had just experienced. Another instance of Archimedes' obsession with his work is reflected in his daily routine, or lack thereof. It is said that he would become so absorbed in solving mathematical problems that he often forgot to eat or drink. His intense focus on intellectual matters led him to neglect basic self-care, and he would sometimes spend entire days working without any regard for his physical needs. This led to a reputation for eccentricity, as he seemed uninterested in the mundane aspects of life that most people would consider essential. In fact, it is believed that Archimedes' preoccupation with his work led him to be somewhat reclusive. He did not seek fame or recognition, and many of his most important discoveries were shared with the world only after his death. Archimedes was not interested in the practical applications of his work during his lifetime, which is in stark contrast to the way many modern scientists and engineers approach their fields. He was driven by a passion for discovery and understanding, rather than by the desire for wealth, fame, or practical utility. Archimedes' disinterest in practical matters extended beyond his personal life to his interactions with others. While he was undoubtedly respected for his intellect, it seems that he was not overly concerned with cultivating relationships or engaging in social activities. His work was his primary focus, and everything else, including his social obligations, took a back seat. This detachment from the world around him often led to the perception that Archimedes was eccentric or even aloof. In many ways, Archimedes' obsession with intellectual pursuits reflects the nature of scientific inquiry itself. Throughout history, there have been many great thinkers who have dedicated themselves so fully to their work that they have lost sight of the world around them. Archimedes' singular focus on solving the puzzles of the universe, even at the cost of personal well-being and social interaction, demonstrates the profound dedication that is often required to achieve great intellectual feats. Yet, despite his apparent disconnection from the practical realities of life, Archimedes' contributions to science and mathematics have had a lasting impact on the world. His work laid the foundation for many of the principles that would later be expanded upon by scientists such as Isaac Newton and Albert Einstein. Archimedes' discoveries in the fields of geometry, physics, and engineering continue to influence modern scientific thought, and his name remains synonymous with intellectual brilliance. In the end, Archimedes' obsession with intellectual pursuits over practical matters was not a flaw but rather a defining characteristic of his genius. His ability to immerse himself fully in the world of ideas, without concern for the mundane aspects of daily life, allowed him to make groundbreaking discoveries that continue to shape our understanding of the world today. His legacy serves as a reminder of the power of intellectual curiosity and the importance of dedicating oneself fully to the pursuit of knowledge, even if it means neglecting the practical concerns of everyday existence. Though Archimedes' obsession with his work may seem extreme or even eccentric to us today, it is precisely this kind of dedication that allowed him to make the lasting contributions to science and mathematics that we still study and apply centuries later. His story is a testament to the power of the human mind to transcend the limitations of the physical world in pursuit of deeper understanding. In Archimedes' case, his intellectual pursuits were not simply a matter of curiosity but a driving force that led to some of the most profound insights into the nature of the universe. I showed disrespect and the soldier killed me for it. I am Archimedes, and my life, my story, ends not in the quiet of a study or in the safety of the university, but in the harsh reality of war. I never expected to die like this, in a moment of distraction, killed by a soldier while I was absorbed in the world of numbers and shapes. But that's how it happened. This is the way my story ended, far from the peaceful halls of the academy, and with no fanfare, no recognition, only the sharp, sudden cruelty of war. It was 212 BCE, and my beloved city of Syracuse was under siege by the Romans. I had devoted my entire life to the study of mathematics, physics, and engineering, and it was my work that, ironically, became my city's best defense. I designed war machines, catapults, cranes, and the claw of Archimedes, a weapon to lift and capsize enemy ships. I also created a system that used mirrors to focus sunlight to set fire to Roman vessels. All of these inventions were crafted to protect Syracuse from the Roman army, but as the siege dragged on, I knew that the fall of the city was inevitable. Despite my efforts, despite all the machines and inventions I had worked so tirelessly on, Syracuse could not withstand the power of the Roman legions. The city fell, and when it did, I was not a soldier. I was not part of the chaos of battle. I was in my study, likely lost in thought, working on a mathematical problem, probably a diagram or some other geometric puzzle that had captured my attention. My mind was always occupied by these questions: these unsolvable problems that I could not ignore, that I had to understand. And that's when it happened. A Roman soldier entered. He had orders to find me and bring me to General Marcellus. Marcellus had given strict instructions that I was to be spared, that I was to be treated with respect, as he valued my intellect and my contributions to Syracuse. But the soldier, perhaps irritated by my apparent indifference to the situation, found me in my study, absorbed in my work. I was not thinking of the siege. I wasn't thinking of the war. I was thinking of the circles, of the diagram before me, the angles, the equations. It seems that when the soldier approached me, I dismissed him. I told him, "Do not disturb my circles." These words, simple as they were, seemed to carry an arrogance with them, a sense of disregard for the soldier's presence. Perhaps I didn't even notice him at first. I was too deep in my work to think about the realities of the world outside. But to the soldier, it must have seemed like a rejection, like I was too absorbed in my own thoughts to acknowledge his role in the unfolding events. Maybe he felt insulted, maybe frustrated. And in that moment, without any further warning, he struck me down. I don't know whether it was a moment of rage, or simple disregard for the order to spare me. I don't know if he realized who I was or the importance of the work I had done. All I know is that in the end, it was my obsession with knowledge, my inability to step away from the problems in front of me, that led to my death. Had I been thinking of something else, had I been paying attention to the world around me instead of being absorbed in a diagram or a problem, perhaps the soldier would have spared me. But I couldn't, stop. And so I died. General Marcellus, upon hearing of my death, was deeply upset. He had ordered that I be spared, that I be treated as an asset to Rome, as someone whose genius had contributed so much to Syracuse's defense. He mourned my loss, recognizing the value of my intellect even in the midst of war. In a way, it was a strange tribute. The Romans were known for their military power, but they recognized something important in me, something that transcended the chaos of battle. It's ironic, really. The same mind that had created machines to defend the city, the same intellect that had given so much to the cause, was the very thing that led to my death. I had no interest in the war, no interest in the politics of conquest. I only cared about my work, my discoveries. And yet, it was my work, my devotion to it, that ultimately brought me into conflict with the soldier, with the circumstances of war, with death. In the end, I am remembered not for my death, but for my contributions to science and mathematics. My work in geometry, in the study of buoyancy, in the development of mechanical inventions, has had a lasting impact. My discoveries paved the way for future generations of scientists and engineers. And though I died violently, far from the peace of the study or the classroom, my legacy lives on. So, here I am, a figure whose mind transcended the boundaries of the world, whose work was often more important than the concerns of daily life. I am remembered not for my actions in war, but for my thoughts and ideas. It is those ideas that live on, beyond the streets of Syracuse, beyond the sieges, beyond the soldiers. And perhaps that, in the end, is the only form of immortality a mind like mine can hope for. My generation did not understand me. I am Archimedes, and though I have spent my life unraveling the mysteries of mathematics, mechanics, and physics, I am well aware that much of my work went unrecognized in my own time. My contributions were revolutionary, groundbreaking in ways that many could not even begin to appreciate. Yet, during my lifetime, I was largely isolated, misunderstood, and at times ignored by those around me. My work was, in many respects, too advanced, too abstract, and often seemed too impractical to be of any immediate use to my contemporaries. I lived in a time when the world was still dominated by ancient ways of thinking, and the leap in understanding that I sought to make seemed too radical for most people to accept. While others were focused on the practical concerns of daily life, politics, and war, I was focused on the abstract, on geometry, the principles that govern the natural world, the laws of buoyancy, and the nature of levers and pulleys. I invented machines, yes, machines that could launch stones at invaders and lift ships from the sea, but those inventions were driven by an intellectual curiosity that went beyond mere practicality. I was not concerned with immediate utility. I wanted to understand the very laws that govern the universe, to uncover the truths hidden beneath the surface of the world. One of the clearest examples of the lack of appreciation I faced was in the realm of mathematics. My work on the geometry of spheres and cylinders, for example, was truly groundbreaking. I was the first to calculate the exact volume of a sphere and to find the relationship between a sphere and a cylinder in terms of their volumes. These were revolutionary concepts, ideas that would form the foundation of modern calculus and mathematics. Yet, at the time, there was no one to truly appreciate the significance of these discoveries. To the people around me, the work I did might have seemed too abstract, too disconnected from the tangible needs of the world. Take my work on the measurement of areas and volumes. I devised methods to calculate the area of a circle and the surface area of a sphere, and I even developed an early form of integral calculus to solve these problems. These methods were years ahead of their time, but they were largely ignored by my contemporaries. The intellectual climate of the day was not ready for such advanced ideas. I was working far beyond what the Greek mathematicians and philosophers of my time could grasp. They were still entrenched in their own ways of thinking about the world, focused on philosophy and the natural order in terms that were more qualitative than quantitative. In my own city of Syracuse, my contributions were not truly appreciated either. While I was revered for my inventions, such as the catapult and the claw of Archimedes used to defend the city from the Romans, my intellectual pursuits were not widely acknowledged. I was seen as a somewhat eccentric figure, an outsider who cared little for politics or the practical concerns of the people. I wasn't interested in fame or fortune, but in solving the puzzles of the universe. And while my inventions did serve practical purposes in times of war, I was more focused on understanding the underlying principles that made them work. Even in the field of physics, my ideas were too far ahead of their time. My principle of buoyancy, which later became known as Archimedes' principle, was a profound discovery, yet it was not widely understood in the context of its significance during my lifetime. When I discovered that the volume of water displaced by an object was equal to the volume of the object submerged, it was a breakthrough. But the implications of this principle weren't immediately obvious to those around me. Most of the people I interacted with had little understanding of the mathematical and physical principles I was working with. My work was too abstract, and its true potential was not recognized until centuries later. I also spent much of my time working on mechanical inventions, but they, too, were often misunderstood. I designed machines for lifting, for measuring, and for propelling objects, but these machines were often seen as curiosities or novelties rather than as serious innovations. My work on the Archimedean screw, a device used to raise water for irrigation, would not be fully appreciated until much later, when it was recognized for its practical application in agriculture and engineering. In my time, however, such inventions were often viewed with skepticism, as they seemed more like eccentricities than essential tools. What made matters worse was my own personal detachment from the affairs of the world. I was not a politician, nor was I concerned with the practicalities of wealth and power. I was not interested in fame or recognition. My sole focus was on my work, my studies, and my inventions. This lack of interest in personal advancement or public acclaim made it difficult for others to see the value of what I was doing. I didn't seek to ingratiate myself with others or build relationships that might have helped promote my ideas. My obsession with my work left me isolated, and in a time when social connections were key to advancing one's position, I was somewhat of a recluse. Even my most famous discoveries, such as my work on the principle of the lever, were not fully understood or utilized in my lifetime. I wrote extensively about these ideas, and I even famously proclaimed that, "Give me a place to stand and with a lever I will move the world." It was a bold statement, and it reflected my belief in the power of intellectual understanding to overcome physical limitations. But in the practical world, there were few who grasped the true importance of my work. My ideas were revolutionary, but they were too advanced for the world around me to recognize. Perhaps the greatest irony of my life is that my work, though revolutionary, would only be fully appreciated long after my death. I was aware that my discoveries were ahead of their time, but I did not foresee the extent to which they would be ignored or misunderstood in the short term. My genius, it seems, could only be recognized by future generations, by those who had the knowledge and the context to understand what I had done. I was a visionary in an age that was not yet ready to see the future. In the end, I did not seek the recognition of my peers. My passion was for discovery, for understanding, and for solving the problems that fascinated me. But it is a sorrow to think that so much of my work was not fully appreciated in my lifetime, that my ideas were so far beyond the grasp of my contemporaries. And yet, as I look back from the vantage point of history, I know that my work, though unrecognized during my time, left an indelible mark on the world. My legacy lives on in the principles of science and mathematics that continue to shape the world today. Perhaps in the end, that is all a man can hope for, that his ideas will live on, even if the world is not ready to understand them while he is alive. My best works just disappeared. Do you hear it? The silence? The absence of a voice that once thundered with discovery and danced with ideas as boundless as the stars? That silence, my friends, is the sound of knowledge lost, of wisdom unraveled by the careless hands of time. And it is my voice, that now lingers as a faint whisper, an echo fading into oblivion. I am Archimedes, a man who lived not for conquest or wealth, but for the purity of truth. My theorems, my proofs, my geometries, they were not mere scribblings on papyrus. No. They were windows to the cosmos, visions of how the world moves and breathes. But what becomes of such visions when the scrolls that hold them are burned, torn, discarded? What becomes of the labors of a lifetime when fire and war devour the fragile vessels of thought? I tell you, it is like losing a part of one's soul, scattered to the winds. There were texts I wrote, treatises so intricate, so profound, they might have reshaped the very foundation of mathematics. My on-sphere making, my mechanical theorems, they are gone now, vanished into the abyss of history. And oh, how it wounds me to imagine what could have been. What discoveries humanity might have made if those pages had survived. Do you know what remains? Only fragments, pieces like shards of a great mosaic. Enough, perhaps, to tantalize, to hint at the grandeur of the whole, but never enough to complete the picture. It is as though I have shown you the heavens through a crack in the wall, while the vast expanse lies hidden beyond. And why? Why should such treasures be lost? Because men choose war over wisdom, power over preservation. When Syracuse fell, they spilled blood in the streets, but they also spilled ink, ink that carried the lifeblood of generations yet to come. I pleaded with them, even in death, I begged, do not disturb my circles. Yet, disturb they did. Now I ask you, centuries removed from my time, do you feel the weight of this loss? Do you mourn for the scrolls burned, the knowledge erased? Or does it pass as a fleeting thought, an inconvenience of history? But perhaps there is still hope. Perhaps in your time, the fragments will inspire new minds to take up where I left off. Perhaps in your hands, the fire of discovery will be reignited. For though the parchment burns, the ideas do not. They linger, eternal, waiting to be rediscovered, reimagined. That is my solace, my prayer, that the silence of my lost writings may one day be filled with the voices of those who dream as I once dreamed. I am Archimedes, a man whose thoughts sought to touch the infinite. And though much of my work is gone, I leave you this, the unquenchable spark of curiosity. Guard it well, for it is more precious than any treasure the world could hold.